My name is Edmund Hale. I am 63 years old, and for 41 of those years, I served the same household, not as a friend, not as family, but as something quieter. I was a butler. In houses like that one, silence is not an absence of sound. It is a rule. You learn it slowly, over years, through glances, through pauses that last just a second too long. The house itself stood in the countryside of North Yorkshire, far from cities, far from curiosity, far from anything that asked questions. A long stone structure, older than most of the people who lived in it, with tall windows that never fully opened, and corridors that seemed to remember footsteps long after they had passed. Every morning followed the same rhythm. I would rise before dawn, when the world outside was still undecided about waking. The floors were cold then, even in summer. I would walk the length of the east corridor, counting my steps without thinking, because my body had learned the distance long before my mind. The kitchen staff arrived quietly. They always did. No greetings louder than a whisper, no laughter before breakfast, no unnecessary movement. That was how the household functioned. The family rarely appeared before 10, and when they did, they expected the world to already be in place. Tea at the correct temperature, curtains drawn at the correct height, fire already alive, never roaring, never dying. That fire, the one in the main sitting room, was my responsibility. Every evening, precisely at 6, I would prepare the hearth. Oak logs, dried for exactly the right length of time, stacked with care, as though disorder itself might offend someone. The sitting room was the heart of the house, though no one ever called it that. High ceilings, dark wood panels, portraits of men who had never smiled, and women whose eyes followed you no matter where you stood. And at the center of it all, 2 leather armchairs, facing the fire. That was where they sat. Not together, never together. One chair for the master of the house, the other for whoever was being tolerated that evening. I was not meant to listen. That is something people misunderstand. Butlers are not invisible. We are simply expected to forget. Forget what we hear. Forget what we notice. Forget the weight of certain words when they fall into a room. For decades, I succeeded. I knew when to enter and when to wait behind the door, hand resting lightly on the handle, eyes lowered, breath shallow. There were rules about that door. It was never to be opened without invitation, unless the bell rang, and the bell rang rarely. On that particular evening, nothing seemed unusual. The weather was cold, earlier than expected for that time of year. The fire needed more attention, and I remember thinking, briefly, that the flames sounded louder than usual. I adjusted the logs, stepped back, straightened my jacket, and that was when I heard voices. Low at first, carefully measured. The kind of conversation meant to remain inside walls. I should have left. That is the truth. But something about the tone, about the stillness between words, made me hesitate. I remained where I was, just outside the sitting room, close enough to hear, far enough to pretend I could not. At that moment, I had no idea that those words, spoken so casually beside the fire, would be the beginning of the end of my career. I remained in the corridor, long after Mr. Ashcroft disappeared into the West Wing. The house felt different now, as if it were holding its breath. I sent for the carriage, as instructed, no questions asked. That had always been my role. But as the wheels vanished down the drive, something inside me shifted. For years, I had believed loyalty meant silence, that obedience was virtue, that knowing less was safer. I was wrong, because once a truth brushes against you, even briefly, it leaves a mark. I returned to my quarters, removed my jacket, sat on the edge of the bed, and waited. Sleep never came. Instead, memories surfaced. Small things. Details I had ignored. The locked room beneath the stairs, never opened, never explained. The guest registry with entire months missing. The child's shoe, found once near the garden wall, then quietly discarded. At the time, I had convinced myself it was none of my concern. Now, it screamed. Near dawn, the bell rang again. Once. I rose immediately. When I entered Mr. Ashcroft's study, he was seated, staring into nothing. His reflection in the mirror looked older, smaller. "You will say nothing of what you heard," he said. "I have never spoken out of turn," I replied. "Yes," he said quietly, "and that is precisely why I trust you." Trust. The word felt heavier than chains. "Some matters," he continued, "require distance." He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside, documents, travel arrangements, a sum of money I had never seen before. "You will leave tonight," he said. "Take a position elsewhere. Exile, wrapped in generosity." "I see," I replied. "You have served well," he added. I bowed, and for the first time in years, he did not watch me leave. That evening, I packed. Only essentials. I had learned long ago not to carry memories. Before departing, I walked the grounds one last time. The garden was quiet, too quiet. Near the old wall, I noticed disturbed soil, fresh. I did not approach it. Some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. The carriage arrived. As I stepped inside, I looked back at the house. Its windows glowed warmly, inviting. A perfect illusion. I left before nightfall. Years passed. Different houses, different masters, different names. Yet wherever I went, the past followed. Whispers reached me eventually. Of investigations, of missing records, of the Ashcroft estate sold, then abandoned. They said the house fell into ruin, that no one could stay there long. Servants resigned. Guests complained of sounds. Children refused to sleep. I was never surprised. Some houses remember, and some bells never stop ringing. Even now, when I hear one, faint, distant, I freeze, because I know what it means. I know what it summons, and I know how easily a life can end, not with a scream. And to this day, I still don't know who else was standing near that fire, listening. I stood there, motionless, as the sound of the bell faded into silence. For most people, it was merely a bell. For me, it was a sentence. That bell had only ever been used for one purpose: to summon a servant when discretion was no longer required. I adjusted my posture, smoothed my jacket, and waited exactly 3 seconds. Not 2, not 4, 3. Then I knocked, softly. "Enter," Mr. Ashcroft said. I opened the door. The fire was still burning, but the room felt colder now. Both men were standing, Mr. Ashcroft near the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back. The other man, closer to the chair, his posture rigid, eyes fixed on the flames. as though refusing to acknowledge my presence. "Yes, sir?" I asked. My voice was steady. Years of practice. Mr. Ashcroft did not turn to look at me. "You may pour a drink," he said. "2." That was unusual. He never drank with guests. I moved to the sideboard, selecting the bottle without being told. My hands did not shake, but my thoughts did. As I poured, I listened. The younger man finally spoke. "So, this is how it ends?" he asked, quietly. "With a drink?" Mr. Ashcroft allowed himself a faint smile. "Endings are rarely as dramatic as people imagine," he replied. "They tend to arrive quietly, like old age or debt." I placed the glasses on the table. The clink of crystal echoed far louder than it should have. The younger man did not reach for his. "I didn't come here to negotiate," he said. "I came because you owe me the truth." Mr. Ashcroft turned at last. His expression was calm, almost kind. "The truth," he repeated, "is a flexible thing." I felt his eyes shift toward me. Just for a moment. A glance, a reminder. "Leave us," he said. My heart skipped. That was not part of the usual ritual. "Yes, sir," I replied. I turned toward the door, slowly, deliberately. But before I reached it, the younger man spoke again. "No." The word hung in the air, heavy. "I want him to stay," the man said. "He should hear this too." Mr. Ashcroft's jaw tightened, barely, but I saw it. "This does not concern you," he said. "It concerns everyone in this house," the man replied, "whether they know it or not." Silence returned, thicker now. Mr. Ashcroft considered him for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he nodded. "Very well," he said. "He may stay." I remained by the door, unmoving. "You see," the younger man continued, "no matter how much money you paid, no matter how far you sent me, some things don't stay buried." Mr. Ashcroft's voice hardened. "You were warned." "I was silenced," the man replied. "There's a difference." The fire shifted again. A single log cracked violently, sending embers spilling outward. "That child," the man said, his voice now trembling, "was never meant to disappear." My breath caught. Child. Mr. Ashcroft stepped closer, lowered his voice. "You will not speak of this." "I already have," the man said. That was when I understood, truly understood. This was not a plea. It was leverage. Mr. Ashcroft turned sharply. "Who?" he demanded. The man smiled, a sad smile. "Someone who doesn't answer to you." I felt the room tilt, as though the foundations themselves had shifted. Mr. Ashcroft straightened. Then, slowly, he exhaled. "So," he said, "you believe you hold power." "I believe," the man replied, "that you've mistaken silence for loyalty." Mr. Ashcroft's gaze returned to me. This time, it lingered. "You may go now," he said. I bowed my head, turned and stepped into the corridor. But I did not go far. I stopped just beyond the door, listening. Behind me, voices lowered, words lost to distance. Then, a sound I had never heard before. A chair falling, followed by a sharp intake of breath. And then, nothing. I waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. The door opened. Mr. Ashcroft emerged, alone. "Send for the carriage," he said, "and see that our guest does not trouble us again." I nodded. "Yes, sir." As he turned away, I noticed something on his cuff. A dark stain. Too dark to be wine. That night, I did not sleep, because for the first time, I realized something dreadful. I knew too much. The voices were unmistakable. One belonged to Mr. Ashcroft, the master of the house, a man whose presence alone was enough to quiet an entire room. The other did not belong there. I recognized it immediately. A younger voice, measured but strained, as though each word required effort. They were seated close to the fire. I could hear the subtle sound of leather shifting, the quiet crack of wood burning, and beneath it all, something heavier. Mr. Ashcroft spoke first, slowly, deliberately, as he always did when he wished to be understood without repetition. "You must appreciate," he said, "that certain matters cannot simply be undone." There was a pause, not the natural kind, the sort that exists only when someone is choosing which truth to tell and which to bury. The younger voice responded, "I do appreciate it, sir. That's why I came in person." That was unusual. Visitors were rare, and those who did come were never invited to sit. The fire crackled louder. I shifted my weight slightly, the floorboard beneath my shoe responding with a faint complaint. I froze. No reaction from inside. They had not heard me. Mr. Ashcroft exhaled. Not a sigh, but something close to it. "You should not be here," he said. "Not after all this time." Another pause. Longer this time. "I didn't know where else to go," the younger man replied. His voice wavered, just briefly, like a crack in glass. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. Not merely improper, but dangerous. I had served enough years to understand when a conversation should never have been overheard. And yet, there I was. Mr. Ashcroft lowered his voice. "So you believe," he said quietly, "that appearing at my doorstep will somehow resolve this?" The response came quickly. "No, sir. But I believe pretending it never happened won't either." The words settled heavily in the room. I felt them even through the wall. The fire shifted again. A log collapsed inward, sending sparks upward, as if reacting to the tension itself. Mr. Ashcroft spoke once more. "This house," he said, "was built on discretion, on silence, on understanding one's place." I swallowed, because I knew, without being told, that those words were not meant only for the man by the fire. "You were given your compensation," Mr. Ashcroft continued. "You were told, very clearly, to disappear." There it was. The word that changed everything. Disappear. The younger man laughed softly, not in amusement, but in disbelief. "That's the problem," he said. "I tried." Silence followed, complete. Even the fire seemed to hold its breath. I leaned slightly closer to the door, heart beating louder now, each thud sounding dangerously close to exposure. "You cannot simply erase a person," the man continued. "Not when blood is involved." Blood. The word echoed in my head. Sharp, final. Mr. Ashcroft did not respond immediately. When he did, his voice had changed, lower, colder. "You are mistaken," he said. "One can erase almost anything, given the proper means." I felt a chill run through me. Not from the cold, from understanding. The younger man stood up abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor. "I won't leave," he said. "Not this time." That was a mistake. I knew it the instant the words were spoken. Mr. Ashcroft rose as well. I could hear it in the way the leather sighed, the subtle authority in his movement. "You already have," he replied. "You just don't realize it yet." At that moment, a sound cut through the air, sharp, metallic. The bell. The bell rang. Once, That bell had not rung in years. My blood ran cold, because that bell meant only one thing. I was being summoned.